finance as connected to the international system as it is working today, and that reminds me of my days at the World Bank and the Financial Stability Board, etc. Second, come back on the financial inclusion, which is new finance at the retail level, the level of people, and then come back to an important question, which was mentioned by many people, which is basically at the end of the day, the financial system and finance is based on trust. And where is trust going today? I mean, will we accelerate the distrust, or will we build a new form of trust, which is essential to develop any of the things that we've discussed today? So on the first point, a lot has already been said. I think the COVID crisis was not created by the dislocation or the fragmentation of the international system, but it's highlighting the fault line of the system. It's probably the hardest geopolitical and cultural challenges to the system, both I would say the soft informal one, the G7, G8 or G20, which is totally powerless today. I mean, I hope I'm wrong, but it's a pity that the two leaders of the G20 and G7 are this year Saudi Arabia and the United States. It's probably a bad pick for both. We couldn't imagine a worse pick, actually. But also a tough time for the traditional international organizations, the IMF, the World Bank, the UN, etc. They are condemned because of the lack of coordination between countries to do a little bit more of the same. And more of the same is not going to make it to address the challenges raised by this crisis. I mean, we discuss the needs of emerging markets to the tune of 2 to 3 trillion, and the G20 comes with a 15 billion moratorium on debt service. That's what the international system has been capable of producing so far. So I hope this crisis will find a way for a radical revamp of the system, the capacity to use new tools, to discuss a new governance instead of the fragmentation that we are seeing. And also, and I think it's important to discuss that with now, a new engagement with the private sector. I mean, there is no way we can get out of this crisis if we don't have a forceful public sector engaging, sincerely, genuinely with a private sector. It's not going to happen, and so it's not going to be more of the same. And I'm discussing that with my ex-colleagues from the IFC, on the World Bank, and IDB Invest, etc. We have to scale these efforts up. If not, I mean, the World Bank, we say, okay, we mobilize 150 billion over 2 years. I mean, it's a drop in the bucket, 150 billion. It's nothing, even if it's a lot of money in absolute terms. So I think it's very important that all this system realize that what we need is a change of scale and change of culture. If not, the risk of irrelevance might come. And then besides irrelevance, a fragmentation, where you might have, as Jean-Pierre said, digital currency areas, you might have international areas which are competing on norms, standards, etc. So I think there is a real risk that these things can accelerate. That was my first point. The second point on financial inclusion, a lot has been said. I mean, I spent a lot of time when I was at the World Bank to explain people that when you discuss development of countries, you need, of course, physical infrastructure. And when people think development, they mean, roads, airports, dams, telecoms, etc. But you need also social infrastructure, obviously education, health, and you need financial infrastructure. That is very critical. I mean, this is really central at all levels. You need proper financial markets, you need pension, insurance, credit, you need access to finance, etc. And I think it's been very well shown, as you said, by this crisis, Ricardo, just now. In many countries, if we had not had the fintech capable of distributing government support to people, we would be toasted. I mean, we are invested in Movi in Colombia. I mean, they've been chosen by the government to distribute money to the poorest. If Movi had not been there, I don't know how you do that, because you had nobody to distribute cash. So it's very interesting to see that might be an accelerator of financial inclusion. I think you have exactly the same positive news flow in many Latin American countries. So I think it's extremely important to see where it goes, in particular in countries which are still largely unbanked and where financial inclusion is still pretty low. Third, it's a relationship with what Jean-Pierre said on trust and confidence. I think everything we will do now will be done faster and better if we have trust. It will be done slowly and badly if we don't have trust. I mean, trust is really can save us time, money, energy, etc. That's really at the heart. The global financial crisis was a first blow to trust. I mean, everywhere on Earth, trust has disappeared. It's very difficult to measure. I mean, you don't really, you have kind of indices, or you have the panels, and they say trust of business people, trust of household, etc. It's a proxy. We don't really know how to measure trust, but we know that trust is indispensable for the proper functioning of market economy, for the proper functioning of the financial system, and the proper functioning of democracy. So trust has been challenged by the global financial crisis, and we arrive weaker with the COVID crisis. We saw that. Confidence, which I prefer to trust, actually comes from Latin. It's con, together, with federe, trust. So it's really the trust that we have in each other, the trust we have with our peers, and the trust we have with the people above us and below us, with institutions, and with the people around us. In 2008-9, and Jean-Pierre might remind this, we did the rescue of the banking system. And for many people, banks means the rich and powerful. So we've rescued the rich and powerful, and then people say, what's in it for me? And so that's in many advanced economy vis-a-vis the elites and the institution, and vis-a-vis the financial system. You add to that what David mentioned, the shallow intellect of the media system, the social networks, etc. You've seen the recent example is now President Trump wants to ban the social networks because they say we want to add the fact-checking button on the tweet of President Trump. So we are coming to a point where this kind of discussion can happen, which is totally crazy. On top of that, you add the rising inequalities. The move has not been stopped, to the contrary, by the global financial crisis. It's still going on now. Plus the new anxiety vis-a-vis climate, vis-a-vis technology, terrorism, as was mentioned, etc. So distrust is just everywhere. And as I said, distrust will accelerate the number of tensions and will make every exit strategy much more complex and much more costly. In particular, because we did not really address that question since 2008 and 10. We've done a number of things. Of course, we have adopted, and this is really part of my DNA, the Social Development Goals in New York in September 2015, and we are all committed to that. Even the US, there is a climate chapter in the SDG, which is still there, and the US are still part of this. So whether we like it or not, we are part of the SDG. We have COP21 on climate. So we have a roadmap to rebuild trust, but we never really discuss the underlying financial system that is required. That's an important point. The other point is that we have let the central banks play a very big role through that period. And the relationship with central banks is very ambiguous. On the one hand, we are very happy they do the job. On the other hand, we still feel it's not totally democratic. What were these people, etc.? You see that in Europe or in the US and in many countries. So these are big building blocks which have been moved in the past 10 years, but they have not been enough to restore trust. And we need it for the after. And so my point is, will we be capable of using that crisis in the right direction, to leverage what Jean-Pierre described and use the new tools at our disposal without distrust, embracing them and not being kind of shy and reluctant and let this be imposed on us, which is a real risk. So are we capable of together doing that? I'm not so sure. I wish. So for the time being, you have a number of positive initiatives. You have companies which behave properly. Nana, you're an example, and others. But it's mostly relying on the goodwill of few individuals, on the goodwill of few institutions. But there is no systemic change. We are still very much working. You quoted Milton Friedman, who was a genius in many respects, but he also is one of the origin of the shareholders' capitalism as we know it today, where the social purpose of business is to make profit, which is reaching its limits. And I would prefer to use the formula by Colin Myers, the former dean of the Oxford Business School. The social purpose of business should be to find profitable solutions to the problem of this planet and its people. So it's not to say profit is bad. This profit is a mean to an end, not an end to an end. So if we don't go to the very root of the system today and change that, I'm afraid trust will not come back. People need to see that the system is working for them, not for a minority. It needs that. We need to discuss the tools, cryptocurrency, digital, etc., but also the norms and the standards, accounting rules, fiduciary duties, compensation policies, disclosing, rating, everything that makes the daily life of all of us around this Zoom conference. I'm still optimistic. I think this can be achieved, but let's be honest, the hurdle is extremely high. So I still believe that the best can come out of this crisis, but we better get started soon. Thank you.